Grief filled the great hall of Mandev like a heavy fog that refused to lift. Nobles stood in silence, their heads bowed. Soldiers, hardened by war, now stood still with softened eyes. The people of Mandev had gathered to witness the final moment, the end of a king they believed had been taken too soon. The body, wrapped in royal cloth, was lowered slowly toward its resting place, and a quiet wave of sorrow moved through the hall. Some wept openly, others clenched their jaws, holding back what they could not fully contain. It was not just the loss of a ruler, it was the loss of certainty, of stability, of something that had once stood firm. Even Queen Sharon stood among them, her face composed, her posture steady, though within her thoughts moved far differently from the grief around her. And then a voice broke through the morning. "Men of Mandev and of Siro, your king lives." The words did not echo loudly, but they struck harder than any shout could. Heads lifted, eyes turned. Confusion spread first, then disbelief, and before the murmurs could form into questions, the great doors at the far end of the hall opened, slowly, deliberately, and from within that opening he appeared. King Malu, alive, walking forward with a calm that silenced even the air itself. His steps were steady, measured, untouched by the weight of what had just unfolded. The hall froze. No one moved, no one spoke. The grief that had filled the space moments ago collapsed into shock so deep it felt unreal. Some staggered backwards, others dropped to their knees. It was as though the dead had risen, not in horror, but in authority. But no one felt it more than the Queen. Sharon's composure shattered, not outwardly, not in screams or sudden movement, but in the stillness that took over her body. Her eyes fixed on Malu, wide not with fear alone, but with the realization of what this meant. The plan had failed, completely. Every step she had taken, every move she had calculated, had not only been seen, but turned against her. And now the man she had tried to bury stood before her, alive and watching. Malu did not rush his words. He allowed the moment to settle, to press itself into the minds of every man and woman present. Then, with a voice that carried no uncertainty, he gave a single command: "Arrest the Queen." The words fell like a blade. For a moment nothing moved, then, suddenly, steel. The guards closest to the Queen, men who had long stood under her influence, drew their swords without hesitation, stepping forward to shield her. Their loyalty had already been decided long before this moment, and they would not abandon it now, not even in the face of a living king. The tension in the hall rose instantly. Hands moved toward weapons, eyes shifted between command and defiance. The line had been drawn. Then General Philip stepped forward. His presence alone shifted the weight of the moment. His voice followed, not raised, not strained, but firm with authority earned through truth and loyalty. He ordered them to stand down, to lower their swords, to remember who they served. But the men did not move. Their grip tightened, their stance held. For a breath, it seemed as though blood would be spilled within the very hall meant for honor. And then, more soldiers entered. From every side, from every opening, loyal forces of Siro and Mandev filled the hall, their numbers overwhelming, their formation unbreakable. What had been a moment of defiance quickly became one of realization. The guards around the Queen saw it clearly. They were outmatched, surrounded, and without escape. One by one, slowly, reluctantly, their swords lowered, not out of surrender of belief, but out of acceptance of reality. There was no fight, only the end of it. They were seized immediately, every man who had raised a blade in defense of the queen, 35 in total, bound, disarmed, stripped not just of weapons, but of position. And at the center of them all stood Queen Sharon, no longer shielded, no longer elevated, but exposed before the very people she had once ruled beside. Malu watched it all, not with anger that burned outward, but with something far heavier. Betrayal does not always shout. Sometimes it settles deep within a man, reshaping how he sees everything around him. This was not just an attempt on his life, it was a fracture within his own house, his own throne, his own trust, and that was something no king could ignore. When he finally spoke again, his voice carried not just authority, but judgment. "In 7 days," he said slowly, his eyes fixed upon those before him, "justice will be carried out." Execution. The word was not spoken, but it was understood. No one questioned it, no one challenged it, because in that moment the king had not only returned, he had reclaimed everything that had been taken from him. And in doing so, he had reminded all of Mandev that betrayal, no matter how carefully planned, will always meet its reckoning.